Hello and welcome to today's offering, Building the Foundation of a Successful Program Evaluation Using a Logic Model. Today on the line we have our presenters, Dr. Brandon Simmons and Dr. George Bradley, both from the College of Management and Technology here at Walden University. This offering was originally presented at the Walden 2020 National Faculty Meeting in Tampa, Florida. We're so glad to have Dr. Simmons and Dr. Bradley back with us for today's recording. And at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Bradley. Welcome.
Welcome. Good afternoon. First of all, let me start by saying that the program evaluation is one of 4 capstones in the DBA program. We have our traditional capstone. We have our consultant that's guided by the Baldrige guidelines. We have our secondary quantitative data analysis, and we have program evaluation. And our program evaluations when we evaluate different programs in businesses. And our logic model is the foundation for successful program evaluation. The definition that we have here is our CAN definition, and it's by patent in 1997. Let me see, can I break that down a little bit? Program evaluation, I say, is a systematic method for collecting, analyzing, and using data to examine the effectiveness and efficiency of a program. We'd also hope that a successful evaluation can contribute to continuous program improvement. Next slide. Focus of most program evaluations, we have 5 components here. Implementation, we'd like to assess to make sure that the original intent, that the alignment of the original intent is there. Also, effectiveness. Make sure that that we are achieving the goals and objectives that were outlined at the beginning. Efficiency. Appropriate use of resources such as the budget and staff time was used appropriately. And cost effectiveness. The goals and objectives did not exceed the cost of producing them. And attribution. We'd like to make sure that the progress on the goals and objectives were met by the program and not by other things going on at the same time. Next slide. Foundation of a program evaluation, we say, is our logic model, and we have a definition by the Kellogg Foundation of 2004. And I'd like to say that the logic model is a graphic depiction or a roadmap that presents shared relationships among resources, activities, output, and outcomes that impact the program. As you can see in the bullets, often it's only 1 page, and with the number of business and different disciplines, no 2 are identical. And we'd like to see with the 1-pager that it's clear and simple. Next slide. In the program evaluations, the logic model relies on tight link between the program goals and objectives, the actual program service, the actual program itself, and the measurement plans of evaluation. And those could be quantitative or qualitative. Next slide. Brandon?
Thank you, Dr. Bradley. So when we actually start looking at the components of the logic model, We basically break up the 5 components into 2 categories. So the first category is basically your planned work. So what are you doing? And when we look at that, we break it into resources, or sometimes those are referred to as input, and then the activities that we're actually doing. So when we think of resources, that could be any of your company's assets that you're contributing to the program. Are you contributing certain employees or faculty members? Are you purchasing certain software or certain packages or training materials that are going to be inputted into the program or initiative? And then the activities are, basically what are you doing? So are you providing training? Are you building training? Are you implementing new policies? Are you trying new cost strategies to reduce costs? Those are your particular activities that you're using in the program to hopefully reach your intended results. Now, when we look at your intended results, really we break those out into 3 different groups. Now here, they say outputs, outcomes, and impacts, but you will see that no one logic model is alike. You'll see in the example that I provide here in just a moment that you can also look at these as short-term goals, intermediate goals, and long-term goals. So next slide, please. So your intended results, this includes the program's desired outputs, outcomes, and impact. Now, remember, just like a dissertation or a doc study, a program and a program evaluation starts with a problem. So this program or initiative has been put in place to address an identified problem that either your organization or company is having. And obviously with any program or initiative, you have certain outcomes or goals that you're wanting to reach based on all the work that you're doing, all the resources that you're inputting into the program. So when we look at outputs, those considered our direct results of the program activities. So for example, if we were developing training, maybe one of our outputs would be the training is complete, development of that training. So maybe you're creating a module, maybe you're putting together a webinar, maybe you're deploying certain policies. Those would be the direct outputs of your planned work that you're doing. Your intermediate or outcomes is a change between inputs and outputs. So basically, it's the intermediate goal. It's the beginning of the change that you were hoping to see taking place in your organization. And then your impact or long-term goals is basically the systematic change that you're deploying the program to hopefully develop. So what are your long-term goals? Do you want your organization to be more cost-effective? Do you want your employees to be more skilled at a certain task, or understand more clearly a certain element of your organization? These are long-term goals. Now, the key here is that there's no clearly defined time frame for each one of these. You, as the program leader or your organization, defines the time frame for each one of these. And it's also important to know that this is really a living document. So as you go through your checkups on your goals, it might be there might be a need to adapt some of your activities or inputs to better align or to improve some of the goals that you're or outcomes that you see. Next slide, please. This is when we talk about logic models, really the importance of it breaks down to alignment and then the identifying gaps. So when we look at our resources and inputs, and it's hard to believe, but many organizations do not sit down and say really how the resources or how the assets that they are putting toward a program actually help them to meet the short, intermediate, and long-term goals of the program. And a logic model helps with that. Obviously, if you've got resources or activities that do not align to any of your short-term, intermediate, or long-term goals, there's really no need to dedicate those assets or resources to that program. Also, it helps you to identify gaps. So where do you need to add additional resources or activities to make sure that you have coverage toward each goal? So maybe you need to put more resources to focus on one goal, and maybe you got too many maybe unneeded resources on another short-term or intermediate or long-term goal. So it really helps with gaps and alignment. Next slide. So some key points. A logic model is a plan or a roadmap for program development. We consider it the foundation of any program or initiative, as well as the program evaluation. It helps with alignment, and it helps with filling gaps in your program or initiative. Next slide. It should also be considered a living document that can be adjusted as the program staff learn more about each of the components of the model. Maybe after you reach your short-term goals, you realize that adjustments are needed, and so you change certain inputs or activities or add additional inputs or activities. So it's never set in stone. It's always a living document that can be adjusted as time goes by. Next slide. And we're going to look at an education example. So this is an example of a 3-year program evaluation I did a few years back. You'll notice at the top that we've clearly defined a problem here that the district was having. Now, if we were doing this as part of a doc study or a dissertation, this would be a perfect place to really lay out our general and specific problem that our study is, our program or initiative is looking to address. How we read this is from left to right. So we'll look at our inputs and we'll realize that we purchased digital learning resources for all grade levels. You know, it's kind of interesting at the time of this recording, that's, you know, we're going through the pandemic, that many of our schools are having to transition to remote learning or online learning at a very rapid pace. And so back in 2013-14, the school district here was working to provide digital resources and to improve the use of those resources throughout their district by their teachers and students. And so this is the logic model that we were used to implement that program. And so we developed what we call a turnkey training model, which was a basically adapted train the trainer model that we wanted to deploy. And we obviously funded that and provided the resources for those. And then we negotiated a license for a digital product called Discovery Education for all students and teachers in the school district. So our strategies were around creating access to digital learning resources for all teachers. 4 teachers from every school were kind of selected as trainers. We would train them and provide, you know, structured full days of training on use of digital resources, and then we would send them back to their schools to train their colleagues, and we would provide them all the resources they need to complete that training. And so as we look at their short-term goals or impact, you can see that one of them was that, hey, you know, the first year, the teachers would complete the first year of training. Hopefully we would see an increase in use of resources, and that our teachers were providing training to their school staffs. And you can see how each goal is aligned to the next intermediate goal and long-term goal. You'll also see that while we were trying to improve the usage, we were also looking to be cost effective. So what we wanted to measure was with the increased usage, we were actually getting more bang for our buck and a lower cost per student who was participating in DE or Discovery Education. Next slide, please. And so here, what Dr. Bradley and I have compiled for you is a list of resources that we can provide you that have access to, including a copy of this presentation. There's blank logic models. There is guidance on using logic models and other resources that we hope you will find useful. If you have any questions about those, feel free to reach out to either one of us on those. Next slide. Here are our references. Next slide. And then finally, here's our contact information. If you have any questions, comments, or need guidance on anything around logic models or program evaluation, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be glad to help you in any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much for both of our presenters again. I appreciate you carving out time to present this information that is so valuable. And once again, it was originally presented at the Walden 2020 National Faculty Meeting. So thank you both, and we want to wish all of those listening to this recording a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.